Hello.
Welcome to Chronicles of the Phoenix. We are back. We have a very exciting episode for you all today. And given that this is the day after Thanksgiving, and we're hopeful that we can offer something that is aligned with some holiday traditions and rituals. This episode is one where we explore gratitude as more than a holiday ritual. It's a way of seeing, a way of belonging. We look at how gratitude opens the door to everyday magic and ancestral connection, and how intuitive practices like psychic readings can help us navigate grief and transition. So as we gather around tables this season, we reflect on what it means to give thanks beyond the myth and honor the truth that all we have is borrowed. This is inspired by the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address, where we consider gratitude as a relational practice, one that connects us to earth, to each other, and to the unseen. So Erin is going to kick us off with talking about the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address.
Yeah, I love the opportunity to get to meet a bunch of different people through our therapy practice and learn from one another in that. And I met with someone recently, and we were talking about upcoming Thanksgiving holiday and the Thanksgiving origins and the complexity of that and how it's tied to colonial violence, and just acknowledging the complexity and the deep and wanting to deepen the understanding of gratitude as truth-telling and repair, and like what we can do with that. And she had shared with me a tradition that she does with her family and the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address that she added in a few years ago with her family that just kind of balanced out. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And so I wanted to learn more about it, and I did a little research. And in the Haudenosaunee tradition, gratitude begins with naming all our relations: the earth, the waters, the plants, the animals, the winds, the sun, the moon, and the people. It's called the words that become before all else. We're not here to teach this tradition, but we're inspired by its spirits, that giving thanks is a way of remembering we belong. And they do this tradition it's not just Thanksgiving, but it's any time that they have a meaningful event and practice. They say this blessing before. And I was grateful that she shared it, and I thought it would be something to start with today.
Yeah, I think that really captures the essence of gratitude well. You hit on a few interesting points there. One is that this address really draws on what feels to me like the true meaning of gratitude, connecting in with the earth, giving thanks for all that is around us. And the other piece is the complex nature of some of our holiday traditions. I think that in our culture, we often are taught a version of history in a particular way, and then we learn later on that we might not have had the whole truth or the full picture. And what I love about what your client shared is that their family leans into gratitude, but from more of an Indigenous perspective.
Right. And what we know is that gratitude practices have been shown to increase resilience and reduce symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So it really does help to do that. So how do you distinguish between performative gratitude and embodied gratitude?
I distinguish between performative and embodied gratitude by recognizing that performative gratitude is something that we're a little less connected to personally. I think the idea of embodiment is that we are integrated and connected in our body, our soul, our mind. So when we have that interconnection, embodied gratitude is linked to our most authentic selves in a way that's deeply connected to our roots and what's important to us. Performative gratitude is in a sense, exactly what it says. It's performing. It's taking something that we feel we should be doing, recognizing that, oh, it's Thanksgiving. I should be grateful today. Let me think of something to say related to that, right? So yeah, I think embodied gratitude is actually living the practice, whereas performative gratitude is something that we feel we should be doing for some sort of external reason. So that's how I distinguish it.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And that is a very different practice. I think when you were talking, I was thinking about the child who's told by their parents, go say thank you to your grandparents for that gift, versus the child who receives the gift and just naturally is like, oh my gosh, thank you. I've been wanting that, it's a very different embodied experience, as you said.
Yeah. And that idea of emotional intelligence, right? Recognizing the value in something, I think is another way to say what you just explained, that we try to teach our children to do things not just in the action that you take, but understanding the why and what the benefit of that is. So I feel like for gratitude, it's similar. If you recognize the link to why it's important, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, it helps ground you in a natural sense of participating in that practice, as opposed to it just being something that is a learned behavior for you.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So, linked to gratitude is another cool thing we want to talk about today, which is everyday magic. And everyday magic is essentially experiencing moments of synchronicity or intuition and deep connection. So, I would define it as something that exists in the world around you. When you are staying open to receiving things, you're more likely to see them as magical or more than just coincidence, right? Something that the universe delivers to you or shows you as a little sign that all these things are connected. I feel like in order to be available to that, we have to have a presence that allows us to notice what's going on and pick up on these things. Otherwise, we might miss them. They're not these giant things that smack us in the face and say, okay, here it is laid out for you. I mean, sometimes they could be more obvious than others, but our brain is constantly filtering information to try to understand what's important to us and what's not important. So a lot of these everyday magic experiences can be filtered out as unimportant if we're not looking for them.
Sure.
So we have to take the time to get into the right frame of mind to notice them. And then we're more available to see what's happening around us.
Yeah.
So everyday magic is something that's pretty near and dear to me because it's a practice that my family has been engaging in for quite some time. Actually, initially, my mom was the person who introduced this idea to me. And I believe she had somebody she was following a blog of who would send emails out either daily or weekly. I believe it was every day with just a short list of what their magical moments were for that day. And my mom actually had sent that to my sister and I and engaged us in a practice of doing the same thing. This was through email. So I don't know, it was a while ago because we weren't just texting about it. But we actually would take time each day to reflect on what 3 to 5 magical moments were that day that happened to us and share those with one another. So it was a place for us to have conversation and just reinforce these experiences and recognize, oh, that happened for me too. So that's where it started within my family. And it became something that was a foundational practice for us. And even though we go through times where we don't really reflect on this for a while and then it kind of comes back in, I believe it really gave us a lens to see the world in this different way. And even to this day, if one of us has something happen, we'll reach out and share that. And it just puts us in a state of mind that keeps us open to noticing these things and reflecting on some of the positive things happening around us.
Like the cough drop.
Like the cough drop.
I was going to go to my car to get a cough drop before starting this podcast, and I grabbed my keys and out popped a cough drop.
It just flew out of her bag onto the ground.
It was perfect.
And if we hadn't been thinking about this topic today, I guarantee you we would have thought nothing of that cough drop. We would have been like, oh, here's a cough drop. Here, pop it in your mouth. Let's get started. But instead, we had been focusing on thinking about everyday magic and building this podcast. That's a great example of identifying when you're in the mindset and looking for something, you recognize that the universe provides, right?
Yeah.
It's this idea that these things happen all the time around us, and you have to be open to perceiving them in that way and be able to pay attention.
So one thing that's really interesting to me is, I was a super angsty 12 and 13-year-old, and my mom had me do a gratitude practice to help me get out of my very negative mindset. And it was certainly helpful at the time. But I'd never really heard of this magic. And I certainly practice it now. I hadn't heard of it called that until you mentioned it. And I see magic moments all the time. What I'm curious about from you is that you are an extremely intuitive person and are really tapped into your intuition, and I feel like you trust your intuition. Do you feel like because you've developed this practice of looking for the magic moments that has helped you kind of hone into your intuition and trust it more than you might have otherwise had you not have a mom that had you look for those magic moments?
I definitely think so. Intuition for me is very similar in that sense that you have to be attuned to it to notice what's happening. So I often have to try to differentiate between random things that pop into our minds and in our body that, for example, I've often thought a lot about how anxiety can impede intuition because anxiety is very thought driven and it's a narrative running through our heads often. And it is giving us some kind of script around what we're worried about, what could be happening in the future. And intuition is different than that. It's a gut level sense of something and almost perceiving that something could be happening or is coming down the pike. So you can see where those things intersect because, again, it's listening to myself and recognizing that I do have a knowing about things at times. And there are differences where it links to magic is when I'm more open to noticing the things around me happening. I generally have to feel very grounded and present to do that. I'm not in my head at all. And to me, being grounded means getting out of your head and into your body. So when I'm stuck in my head and I'm thinking, I'm not noticing. I'm creating a narrative in my own head about what's going on rather than focusing on what's really happening around me and having presence. I'm not noticing anything else going on. But when we can get into that embodied state, the practice of noticing these things is what allows us to feel and understand what is happening around us in a very connected way, kind of to the universe. So I would say it's definitely linked, and practice just reinforces that muscle that you're trying to strengthen to ground yourself and stay present.
Yeah. I love when you're grounded because I can just be like, Court, what'd you feel? I really trust your intuition.
I love when you reinforce my intuition. So I have a question for you related to this. How do you stay open to wonder when life feels very heavy or chaotic?
I think for me, it's always a self-reflective practice. And going back to the Enneagram, because that's been a very helpful tool for me to understand my process. And I go to self-critical place and can get a little bit more rigid in stress and hyper focused on things. So if I notice that I'm starting to do that, I definitely can lose my sense of wonder and in those moments because I can get hyper focused on task and become overwhelmed by like just the operation of the day kind of thing. And like I'm not able to see all the beauty that's around me, and I miss the magic moments and all of that. So I think when I start to notice, and sometimes it's helpful to have trusted people in my life being like, dude, chill out, we notice you're just whatever it is. That's helpful to kind of be like a counter check to recognize, like, step back, and do that acknowledgement of, okay, what is going on for me? Mm-hmm. Like that's how I get back on track of staying open. I love being curious and stuff, and honestly, in chaos, I thrive in chaos. So
I do.
Probably more than the average bear. Hence my willingness at one point to have 5 dogs. So being able to like see silver linings and try to find the magic moments, no matter what is happening in the chaos and the fray, helps me in some ways feel safe, honestly.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think your optimism in a way is your ability to persevere through really difficult situations. And to me, that's a way that you show this practice of yours. I think even when things are chaotic or overwhelming, you're not one to abandon that part of you that has optimism and to find silver linings.
And there's probably times I create chaos as a sense of wonder.
For wonder.
Just for wonder. I'm like, let's see what'll happen. And let's get all the kids together and have a water fight in the middle of the kitchen.
Yeah, I love that.
Sometimes my husband's not a fan, but...
Well, you're the one who's going to bring the fun.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
What role does ritual or routine play in inviting magic into your day?
Ritual is something that helps make things more possible in a way. I think the practice of doing something over and over just continues to expand our openness to that thing, whatever that is. So I think in our therapy practice, for example, we do this with clients all the time. We invite them to make something more of a habit. it can be something very small. So they start to build ritual around any change they're looking to make, and how that then reinforces the pathway in your brain. So with inviting magic in, I think having a ritual where you practice that really makes it much more ingrained in us. Just like how my mom, my sister, and I practiced it for so long, it became sort of a routine. We started to look for those moments. We looked forward to receiving these emails from one another. And just having that different outlook shifts the way that my mind is engaged throughout the day and things around me. So I think the ritual side of this really reframed my mindset to be open to seeing things more. And so then it just sort of exponentially grows from there. So I have a story to share related to everyday magic, because since this is something my family has paid attention to for quite some time, I've definitely had moments where I've noticed some pretty cool big things happening. And so one of the stories that is special within my family is a number of years ago, my mom and I were talking about taking a vacation. We were talking about just all the logistics. Should we really do this? Can we afford it? I believe at the time my son was really young. So, financially, it was like, is this really a good idea? How are the logistics of this going to work for him as a baby and other things? And so at one point, my mom and I really came together and just said, all right, let's do this. This is something we're really wanting. We feel we're deserving of it. We'll figure it out. It might be tight for a little bit, but it's worth it to, invest in taking this trip together. So we had everything set up, and later that day, I got a call from my mom, and what happened was she had gone down to get her mail, and a check was in her mailbox for almost exactly the amount of what we were spending on this trip. And it seems like a silly thing and maybe would have been processed in a different time as, okay, yeah, this is awesome. Like, I didn't expect to get this, refund or whatever it was at the time, but it's here. And so that's great. But at that time, because we had been so focused on what we wanted to see happen and engaged in this thought process, it felt very much like the universe just provided.
Yeah.
That us focusing on leaning into something that meant a lot to us was a way to give back to ourselves. And then having my mom receive this money, it allowed it to just solidify that, wow, this is a magical moment. This is something that almost like manifestation, if you think of it that way. I think magic, everyday magic and manifestation actually go really hand in hand. Mm-hmm. It's sort of this dreamer side to us of looking at what we see around us and what we're wanting for ourselves and putting that into a reality somewhere in our minds that then somewhere allows that to happen for us in the future. So that's exactly what this vacation was for us. It became this thing that we were able to sort of manifest, and the universe provided.
No, that's really, thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. It reminds me of Carl Jung, who's a famous Swiss psychiatrist and psychotherapist, actually described that as synchronicity, and described synchronicity as meaningful coincidence, which that to me, that's what that is, right? Like, it's a meaningful coincidence that you were meant to go on that vacation.
Right.
And that financial windfall gave you the peace of mind to be able to do that and lean in to just enjoy it.
And I think in another time, in another situation, had that not just played out that way, still it would be like, oh, wow, this is awesome.
Sure.
You can have, again, gratitude for something unexpected, but the link was just very strong. And it was really cool to see that synchronicity, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another cool data point is a 2020 Pew Research study found that 62% of Americans believe in some form of spiritual energy or intuition, and nearly 30% have consulted a psychic or medium.
Ooh.
Speaking of
favorite
topics that we both love, psychics and intuitive guides.
We do love them. Psychics as emotional translators, people who help us access parts of ourselves we may not be able to reach alone.
Ooh.
So, have you ever had a psychic reading that helped shift your perspective or helped you heal?
I have had a psychic reading that has shifted my perspective. I love the psychic.
Yes.
I
do. I love the psychic.
We both do.
We do.
We go to the psychic together sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
She may have informed things we should do on the podcast even.
She has.
She's just predicted a lot.
She really feels like you should be on Channel 3.
She really does. I have to figure that out. If anyone who has a connection to Channel 3 is out there, My psychic says that I am destined to get on there and talk about something. My business, this podcast, I'm not sure what it is. We're going to be open to whatever the topic is. But maybe someone out there has a connection for me.
That's true, but she is convinced that Courtney needs to be on the news.
Every time we go, she says the same thing.
She does.
She does. So I'm a big fan of going to the psychic for a connection to things in the future, but also having intuitive readings, understanding how the path I'm on connects both with my history, my family history, and what is to come in the future. And I always leave there feeling more grounded than when I came in, because it tends to take a moment where we are focused so much on ourselves in this moment in time and broaden that out to like a deep history of even like former lives or things that have happened to us that are taking shape now and why, and then also how that connects in with our future. So for healing, I don't have like a specific moment that I was healing from at the time when I went, but what I will say is that a lot of the connections that end up being made to family members, people who have passed, I end up recognizing that things that I'm doing in my life are moving in alignment with what someone is saying. I can get like, you know, positive affirmation that that's happening, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I like that. Just in that sense of wonder, that that connection that we are all just one part of something so much larger, and that there's so much more beyond this, and that there is still a connection to that those were lost, and there's a pathway to that connection that does help me feel grounded as well. And it's the mystical part of it too. It's always like, every time I go, I'm sort of blown away with the things that she's able to tap into, that you and I both are like, there's no way she could have known that ever.
Yeah.
No Google search would have been, she would ever be able to get that information.
Right.
Not even close. So, and it's just, it's wild, that intuitive, like, human to human connection that we can have, that allows us to connect in that way.
Yeah. I actually did an intuitive reading a while ago. What's interesting about this woman is she will audio record your whole session, essentially, so that you can be super present in the moment of what's going on, but then you can always refer back to it or go back and listen. And it was such an interesting experience because she, just like you're saying, was able to know things that there was just no way she, like, you know, I think we all go into a situation like, okay, did you look me up on social media? And now you know I do this or that, or see my family, you know, like those kinds of things. And so there's sort of that moment of like trying to assess like who you're working with and if you can trust that person. And what I loved about this, because it was recorded, is I actually took the time at one point, because I was a little obsessed with it, to like transcribe it all, like write down even just like points from what was said. And I periodically go back and look at it, and it's wild to me that there have just been so many connections. Like, one of the things she was really focused on was my connection to music, which, again, that could be something you could find out about me, right? I don't know.
Sure.
But what was so interesting was, this was years ago, and it was when I was playing music with two of my friends, and I hadn't yet really started doing much with my family, which now I do a lot of music with my family. But one of the things that she focused so heavily on was my husband and I learning something together or doing something together. She went over it in the sense of us like learning an instrument or trying to play something difficult together, like learning the violin together, something we didn't really know. And while we didn't do anything like that, we definitely have gone into writing music together, having a band together, and, you know, slight deviation from what she said, but also very much became this huge part of our lives now. And I don't know that I would have even remembered that that was a thing if I haven't referenced it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to hear and like go back to and then see what sort of played out since then.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And the transcription to be able to go back is really helpful. One of the things that the psychic has always said is like, the guides, which I think is also connected to like the Native American culture too, that we have spiritual guides that are either our ancestors or, whatever that help you come forward. And I've certainly had losses, and she's told me like call on your guides, like if you have, and they like to be useful and stuff. And so thinking of connecting like magic moments with calling on my guides at the top of my hill is a stoplight that just is this like the worst stoplight in the world. It takes forever.
It does. I've been stuck at that, and it's minutes and minutes.
It's minutes and minutes. So I will call on my twins. I'll be like, Alex and Hannah, I'm late. You gotta flip this light. You just
turn this light for me.
I need it to be green, babies. Just like help mama out. And it'll instantly turn green. It feels like both a magical moment, but it also feels like
they're there. Yes.
And then every time that happens, I blow 2 kisses to heaven to like reinforce and thank them for supporting, giving me this gift of time. So then a little bit, because so you can sit at that light for 5 freaking minutes sometimes. So
I love that. It's so true, though. We hear about that all the time, and our psychic does talk a lot about those guys and calling on them. And I think there's such a security in that almost. Like, I don't know, whenever I think of her giving that feedback around when we leave, how to kind of have that whole balance of spirits on the other side that are there to help us out, guide us, give them our pain and our stress and our, moments. But that's such a great example.
Yeah.
I love it. So everything that we've been talking about today is something that I would link to spirit.
Yeah.
That each of these practices or beliefs or things that we've engaged in may not resonate with everyone, right?
Sure.
I know tons of people who are like psychics, my husband might be one of them, who is like, seriously, when we come back from our visits with our psychic that we spend our money on, it's a business expense.
Which my accountant husband says you cannot write that off.
Why? She's our business advisor. We're going to add her to the business plan.
We're not really.
No, that's all a joke. But not all of this resonates with everybody.
No.
And so, but I think it all can be captured under this idea of spirituality. And I think more traditionally, many people, subscribe to a certain religion or, a connective piece in their family that helps shape what that spirituality and that spiritual practice in a family is connected to. And so when you're thinking about, everyday magic, intuition, gratitude, having these connections to sort of nature and earth, I think of our values in buckets. And to me, that's like the spirituality bucket that needs to be fed in some way, some link and connection to what's happening around you, what's happened in the past, what's happening in the future, that takes us out of just, it's like connecting us in with a moment in time, but also expanding our vision of like this moment in time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. And especially as we're entering into the next season of holidays. And for some, holidays can be really hard. And knowing how to ground yourself in a spiritual practice that is grounded in gratitude can be very helpful and protective.
Yeah.
So hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah. And I think it's take from it what resonates with you. We do have some key takeaways. This is our new ending that we do, which is to make sure we leave everyone with some takeaways and maybe a little challenge. But some of the key takeaways we have for today are that gratitude is not just for a holiday. It's a way of seeing and belonging. It's a practice. Everyday magic often hides in the ordinary. Intuitive guides can help us access ancestral wisdom and emotional clarity. And the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address reminds us that gratitude is relational and rooted in stewardship.
This week, we invite you to notice a moment of everyday magic. Pause and let it teach you something. And in closing, to the earth, to the waters, to the winds, to the ancestors, and to each other, we give thanks. May we walk gently, share freely, and remember. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.